Hello, hello. Welcome to the Doom is Dead podcast. My name is Human Bones. I'm here with Dew and Dragon.
Hey guys.
Hello, hello.
We are collectively the commissioners of the Multiplayer Doom Federation. This is the 5th edition of the Doom is Dead podcast. We haven't done one in about 3 months, but we have lots to talk about. Just recently, we organized the 32 and 24 team to put together a new game mode that I don't think has really been taken seriously in the past, and that's kind
No,
of an
it was a
understatement.
complete joke so far.
Yeah, and the maps that were made in the past were made for Z-Daemon public CTF, probably to fit somewhat like 30 people, maybe. So this was the first time that we were able to get a competitive look on three-way CTF, and so we did a testing session about a month ago. Everything went pretty well. I think all the maps that we played in that testing session, we were able to give a lot of good feedback, and the mappers took it seriously. It's kind of you kind of have a core dedicated group of people that participate in every 32 and 24, and they take it very seriously. So they made their improvements. It took about a month, and here we are today. We just had another testing session, kind of more of a finalizing one to make sure there aren't any bugs. And I think it's really super innovative and cool that through ACTF has become kind of a thing. So yeah, we just played them. And what did you guys think? Because I thought it was a lot more competitive, a lot more geared towards the type of stuff that we're looking for, and not just sort of slapping together maps with
Right.
flags in 3 different areas.
Yeah, it was definitely much more fun than the first time around. Like even though some of the players that were there were playing those maps for the first time, never saw even the original versions, and it just went swimmingly. Like it was pretty much like the vast majority of the maps played really, really good. At least that's how I felt. And
Yeah.
even
Okay. Yeah.
even with the public crowd, it was pretty like decently even, decently competitive. So I'm really looking forward to testing some of these in another league.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, when you test maps in the fashion we did, you're bound to have teams of like 6 per team. It's like
Yeah.
at
So,
least 15 or so players, which means that a map can seem very bad because it's, I mean, three-way
because it's
CTF
random,
with
right? Yeah.
just 6 players, 2v2v2, is chaotic enough. So, but I mean, like you said, all the maps played really good. Actually, I didn't play in all the maps. I played in only a few, but the ones that I played were good. They're fun. They're innovative, and yet simple.
Mm.
Like they're easy to pick up. It's not a lot of stuff that requires you to learn in and out in order to be efficient.
Yeah, it's
So,
like in these test sessions, it was basically like even if you thought you made like a strong play and
mhm.
oh god, I'm totally going to score now. Nope, there will be like four more players in your way
Yep.
simply by chance because that's the power of mass public
Yeah.
sessions. So at that point, you had no proper uh, gauge how to you never knew if you were playing well or if it was just random luck. So not perfect for testing, but at least fun for everyone. And I
Mhm.
think we will definitely test these out in another tourney because some of them I'm really fond of.
Yeah, definitely. I feel a lot of them will be. A lot of them caters towards the 2v2v2 fashion, but there are also
Right.
a lot of maps that would work for 3v3v3.
Right, yeah. Some of them are
Oh.
pretty large because that's the way. Like we actually how this unfolded. We asked Shaikoten, who always runs the 32 and 24 sessions, if he could run one for us because we have this. Well, not new, but unexplored game mode that we want to try because the current maps are shit. And he agreed. So it was organized in the traditional way on Doomworld, where it's mostly single-player mappers who basically always almost all of them are single-player mappers who have next to no live experience, how to properly place and space and build those maps so they're in the exact dimensions that deathmatch needs. So it's like oftentimes it's like a completely random luck if it comes out right, or if it's just like yeah, this is too large, it needs to be like twice as small. But this time it's like yeah, some of them were pretty bad during the first rotation. But after everyone put in all those like edits according to feedback, it's pretty damn strong. Like we need to say we don't know exactly if it will work because no one actually has that much experience with three-way CTF.
Exactly.
We ran exactly one tournament on that game mode, so it's still experimental. But this was pretty neat.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the most challenging thing, like you said, is because there is no standard for three-way CTF. I mean, nobody knows exactly what is right and what is wrong. So we kind of focused on making it so that, like the center of the map, there's nothing too complicated in the center. It's because I think what we found going through all the current or the three-way CTF maps that existed before this project was that it was so easy for like one team to grab a flag and then be completely unseen, unnoticed, and just score kind of at will. And so we wanted to try and mitigate that because I mean that's not CTF. So we tried to apply some classic CTF standard to three-way CTF. Obviously, it's not going to be the same, but I'm surprised at how well they adapted to using CTF. And I mean, I think this is I feel like a fairly new process in terms of 32 and 24, where they have like they'll work with someone who's running an event and they'll have a testing session, and they'll get a whole bunch of feedback, and then they go back and they improve the maps. And I think that's the best way to go about it, because this is, to me, since probably 32 and 24, I want to say 12. No, not 12. 14. I don't know. One of the FFA ones. That this is probably the best one since then, because we did the same thing where we had
13.
13, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we did the same thing where there was a testing session, we gave feedback, people got to improve their maps, and it just turned out really well.
Yeah, it's like the feedback sessions were in place for like at least I would say 11, but to a different degree of success, I would say. Like not all the people would return with edits after getting feedback, or it was like not really like the feedback wasn't really all that well accepted or something, because I know it wasn't that properly tested. But this time around, it was definitely the most organized session yet. Like Shai had that ridiculous Google spreadsheet.
Oh man, that was so yeah, it was really well organized.
Like giving roles to everyone who contributed, like with deadlines. You need to turn in your work by this date, and there was a tracker with status and everything. Holy shit, this was so well organized that I've never seen this before happen. in 32 and 24.
Well, and I think what Shai said too was moving forward, he's going to use the same sort of method, which I think it's going to improve. Every
Yeah.
WAD that they work on. So
this was definitely the strongest CTF session, which
Yeah.
like it's the first three-way one, and it's much better than all the two-way classical CTF sessions.
Well, in a way, like when we would find out, oh, 32 and 24, they're doing a CTF thing, we would just kind of sit on the sidelines and go, oh, okay, let's see what they come up with, instead of getting involved and trying to help the maps. I think maybe with the last one, there was a little bit more involvement because
Yeah, there was the 12. I tried to help with that one, but there was
well,
still
16 too. I
and
think
16,
was
16 that one was more organized.
and the maps
But
turned out better because of it.
yeah, but it's like always the classical CTF field is so like competitive even in the mapping regard.
Yeah.
And so like the mappers will refuse anything that's even remotely flawed, like so it's like wishing for a miracle that a perfect map will just naturally appear from something like this. We have like more slack. We don't know what's perfect, and maybe
Right.
nothing can be perfect in three-way. Doesn't matter. There's so much more room for like maps not being completely perfect. That
Yeah.
probably helped a lot.
It did, yeah. It was very unique in that there's, you couldn't really push back on some of the feedback that you were getting because, I mean, you don't have experience to draw from. So I think it was a uniquely cooperative experience. So
And we should also say that this is like a really unique, also in the regard that we were using the OTEX texture pack, which
yes,
was like dropped all of out of thin air. It was just mentioned by I think Zazer, and that's a texture pack, a brand new texture pack from Yukiro, who's a old school mapper from the 90s, and he was like for the past 20 years he was working on a texture set, and it's still like in the beta version, and we got like a permission to include that in the project, which is kind of unique because only that huge single player map set Eviternity got that permission. So yeah, there was also quite a lot of work in the background from Yukiro and Wartorn and others to actually like work on the fly with the textures. So there was so much work behind the scenes that it was like unprecedented.
Yeah, there's a long list of unheralded people that were involved with making this happen. Like you said, Ukiro, Wartorn, Markake.
Right, yeah, Markake
Worst.
compiling around the clock.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought it was great. I mean, I just, the only way that we knew this would be a thing that had a future was because we just decided on a whim. And actually, I have to credit Dragon for this because it was not on my radar at all. But Dragon said, well, what about three-way CTF? Just kind of in a random conversation. And I said, well, I don't know how the fuck to organize. I don't know what I'm doing with that.
It actually started with me wanting to ask for a one flag CTF with 3 teams. But I phrased it wrong, so it turned into three-way CTF. So three-way CTFs was actually never meant to happen.
So it was a verbal typo that led into this project.
Pretty much a lucky coincidence, you could say.
Well, it's it's funny because, like I said, it wasn't on my radar at all, and then we started to look at it, and we're like, okay, how do we organize something like this? And it really did. It took me a month to figure out how to make it like 9 teams. However, I said, I don't even know. You have to like really think about how it worked, but 9 teams, group stages, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And it was like, all right, let's just throw this together and see if it works. But it also kind of set an interesting precedent because now I feel like we could run anything. Like it doesn't matter, and as long as it's well organized and good rules are in place and people are interested in something, I feel like this is the beginning of being able to introduce things that nobody in Doom has really played on a serious level, and it's just kind of, there's a blank
Right, yeah.
slate there.
Once you pinpoint down that template, then it's like anyone can run it with that template. Like at that, anything is possible.
Yes. So the three-way CTF tournament, it did go really well. There were no forfeits, so of course, things got extended a little bit. It was an open scheduling thing, and I think open scheduling works for these events because to make it so strict, it's kind of difficult, especially when you're dealing with time zones and all that kind of fun stuff. But so the regular season actually finished early. It finished 2 days early, which I was surprised about. And then the playoffs, are always a little bit more competitive and the stakes are higher. So typically you don't capitulate when it comes to your times. You want to play when you're ready. And so it took us a little bit longer, but I have to say
some substitutes and stuff like that with minor changes, which is also
we had some team substitutes. Yeah. And I mean, this is all for us. This is all a learning experience because we've done, Ralph has set the IDL standard 12 years ago, and then it was just like, this is what you do every time in this situation. So that's relatively easy to know what to do. But when you're doing something like this and you've never done it, this person dropped out. What do? I guess we should have a free agency where you can pick up, so it's just learning stuff like that.
And it's different when it's two teams and suddenly one of the two teams signals there's a problem, we need more time, something critical is happening, then you're like, okay, we'll postpone. But when that starts happening in three-way, that's a bigger problem because two different teams are waiting for one team's problems. So you need a little bit tweaked the code for these events. There was anyone who saw the semifinals or the finals could not see Samurai bitching all of the time. So can you describe in short what that was about?
Okay, so our semifinal game, which the way the playoffs worked was there were 2 games of 3 teams each, and so within those 2 games, whichever 3 teams scored the most flags moved on to the finals. So it meant a lot more. It wasn't just about winning rounds, it was about scoring the most flags. So we start to play our game, and one of the players on that team was lagging terribly. So we played one round and then we kind of stopped. And of course nobody wants to reschedule, but we want to play a fair game. So we said, do you want us to restart? And that team was like, no, let's just play. I mean, there was some indecision, but at the end of the day they said, let's just keep playing. So the game, we finished the game. Obviously, they had kind of a shitty experience. So I said in one of the channels, I said, hey, let's, do you want to replay? We can try and make it work. So Samurai, the person you're talking about, said, oh, no, let's just, shit happens. Let's just move on. And then all of a sudden it turned into, can try and make it work. Oh, dear. So Samurai, the person you're talking about, said, oh, no. Flambo might want to mute himself because now I can hear myself talking.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and do that for him, maybe.
No, I'm muted. I'll mute it.
Okay. So anyway.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of a story. Hang on.
Yes.
So so Samurai just started about the game, like, oh, why don't we restart? Like, why don't we do we should be in the finals. We were robbed, and it's like, well, I get it, but you said it was okay. Like, what am I supposed to do when you say it's okay? And then 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, well, we were robbed. We should be in the final. So that was the whole situation, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So basically they had a shitty experience, but they had no, should I say, right to demand a replay or whatever. As he said, he
They
tried
had a
to
right at the time of the game.
at
not-
that time, yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like at that time, like rescheduling 3 teams, not that easy.
No, that's why you kind of want to take. You can't do it on a weekly schedule. You kind of have to like
Yes.
think like 2 weeks ahead. Like
Yeah,
I know it's the same amount of people, but
that's why. Yeah, that's why I can see how the Vengeance scheduling is much better than the rigid IDL scheduling, where you need to put in matches every week. That's just not realistic for like in, let's say, in our age, because we are all older, we are all busier at work and everything. It's just not that easy to schedule a game each week and then have it like upset because someone couldn't come in, and then you need to reschedule for the next day. That won't happen with 3 teams with so many people.
right. Yeah, and so you learn about open scheduling. I think moving forward when we do open scheduling, we'll be able to help teams a little bit more, maybe by collecting availabilities and just trying to work through it instead of leaving it up to the teams completely. So there's things that we've learned about it, and this was a good trial run for this type of tournament. But I have to say, the finals game that occurred was, and I know there's a stream coming up on YouTube eventually. It's not going to be with commentary, but I mean that was probably one of the most. First of all, it was the best game of the entire tournament. But it was also one of the most exciting games I've watched in a long time.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it really paid off.
It was decided by one flag.
Yes.
And by one flag, I mean the team that won had one more flag than the other 2 teams, which both ended up second. So you had the last few seconds, basically. The next capture wins it all, and both 3 teams could have done that, which was immensely exciting. And I was just watching that, and I was thrilled. So I can't even imagine how it was in the game. That was amazing.
Well, Dragon was in the game. He could talk about it a little bit.
Well, the thing is, okay, where do I start? So I obviously tried to count all the flags as I was playing the game, like how many each team had. And after the first game where we lost and ended last, I was like, okay, but we didn't last by a big margin, so it's okay. We can take it back. Second game we won, and we were like, okay, let's go, we got this. And at that time I had already, I guess, lost count because I had counted wrong. So when we played the last game, and when me and OJ scored that very last flag to win, he's like, "Oh my God, we won!" And I'm like, "What? No, we didn't. We're tied." And like, "No, we're not." I'm like, "Yeah," but apparently I have calculated things wrong before, so that happened yet again. So when I think it was you, Bones, who announced that we won by one flag, I was like, "Oh my God, what the?"
Yeah.
So you weren't even thrilled.
I mean, I was, but I was thrilled because OJ was like, "Oh my God, we won!" And I'm like, "What?"
No,
Hello?
I mean,
What happened?
in the run up, you didn't even know that you were like playing for the win.
I knew I was playing for the win, but not by a single flag, let alone that both of the other teams were tied. Because I thought it was only NGS which was a threat at the time, because we were one flag up, I think.
Yeah, so
if NGS scores, we're screwed, but we did it somehow. I think it was because of NGS scored that left our flag open, so we could score that last second.
Yeah, so if you thought it was hard to count the flags as a player, it was equally as difficult for me. I had to do it it's just
On the
something to
fly.
get used to, right? But so the first round ended 5-4-3, and like you said, you were in last.
Yep.
And then second round was 4-3-3. You had 4 of the other 2 teams. So this one team had 8 flags, and you and another team had 7. So
Yeah.
moving into the final round, I think it was. I mean, it was almost tied already, and then I think it ended up at like what 4-4-4 or 4-4-3 or something.
Yeah.
Something really ridiculous. And it was like that for solid like 3 minutes. Like nobody could get a flag out. So
And
as soon as you
there was also
scored,
like there was also what added to confusion was that for a while it looked like a race between Zykon's team and Dragon's team because they were ahead. And in the last round, Strangle's team was like dead last with like they had a solid flag count from the previous rounds, but they were lagging behind in the last round. And all of a sudden they came back like in the final minutes. And they were the ones that made it a 3-way tie because all of a sudden they scored 3 in succession or something crazy like that. And holy shit, it became so exciting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was, you were sitting there watching, you weren't even sure, honestly, who was going to win. I mean, there was no favorite. And
At
that's,
that moment, it was about luck, basically.
yeah, so I'm really
Which
glad.
is a huge part of 3-way CTF. Like not always, you're not the master of your fate in 3-way CTF. Sometimes you will just get screwed by coincidence.
Right. I mean, we always talk about how you could have that 2 teams fighting each other, and then that third team just kind of sneaks by and steals a flag and scores on their own without seeing the other 2 teams. I mean, there's so many situations like that it's hard to be aware of what's happening. And so hopefully, as we all start playing and learning strategies and coming up with strategies.
But I don't think you can always take out the luck factor from
That's true.
CTF. Like because when you see sometimes in public games those like 2 scores in a row for the same team inside of 1 second, because of that you can never line that up on purpose. There will always be complete luck.
Well, it's so hard to track which teams have the flag. So in situations where, like, let's say all 3 flags are taken, you have one team's flag, and then you come to your base and your teammate has another flag, and you're like, oh, I had no idea that you even had the damn flag.
Right? Yeah.
Like, now what do we do? Because we have to return our flag and we can't score. So yeah, it's complete chaos. But I mean, I think it's just as fun as regular CTF, if not more so now, because it's just so uncharted.
Less serious. It's less serious.
That too.
Because CTF was done so much and to such depth that okay, not everyone can formulate the precise strategic ideas or anything, but at some level, every top CTF player knows the game to a ridiculous extent. Like understands what's going on, how to behave in situations. In 3-way, it's an open question if you even can understand what's going on at every moment. Sometimes you will just make a decision that will completely backfire, and at that moment when you made it was the best decision. But then someone on the other team made a ridiculous, I don't know, return or just went to your base instead of the other, even though it's the bad idea to do, and it just completely scrambles your plans. So it's like you can't apply the ridiculous tactical porn that's been done with 2-way CTF.
Yeah, really the only way to improve 2-way CTF at this point is to introduce new maps. I mean, the strategies are not going to change really, so
yeah,
it's just about new maps, which there are few and far between. But With this new 32 and 24, we can look to doing some sort of pickup 3-way CTF tournaments in the future instead of these longer ones. So, like I said before, I think it opens up a lot of possibilities, and I was really happy with how this one turned out. So, we can move on now to the FFA tournament that we did. We've actually done a few since November. We did, I think 3 since November, and we had our first one on Odamex last month, about 2 weeks ago. So I thought that actually went really well. You know, obviously the idea behind switching ports for events is you're going to get a different player base. You're going to get more people playing in one than the other, and different people. But I think it proves that you can run a well-organized event on a port that is on any port and have it be successful and have enough people sign up. So I thought that was pretty cool. That was kind of our introduction to Odamex as a league. We'll have to start doing some more things there, but
it was actually also introduction of Odamex 0.8, right?
Ah, that's true. Yes,
0.8 release.
There was that's actually what was also nice, that we worked hand in hand with the developers, that we like waited until they were like, they gave us the get go sign, like now we're ready to play this, and we tested out their new net code and everything, and it was pretty sweet. So, and it also proved like that, that players are actually, if the event is well organized and well announced, players won't necessarily care about the port in this day and age, I guess. And
well, the players that we are targeting won't care about the port.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, if someone was being a massive bitch, we would like, well, why are you even signing for this? So I mean, our general audience was actually quite welcoming of Odamex.
Yeah, very.
And it went as well as the previous FFA tournament.
Yeah, and it was also the introduction of Devastation, who came out of his year-long hiding to hibernation, to come back and just, oh, I'm so rusty. I'm gonna, and he, the guy dominates the FFA tournament. So
yeah,
say what you will about that. Yeah. So that was exciting, and you're right. I mean, it was cool to work with the developers. I mean, we knew sort of that they were planning on, they were working towards a new release, because it was a new release, the first new release in 5 years. So we knew they were working towards it, and it was just about, for us, wanting to take advantage of the new release, and I think it was a big improvement over their last version. So we can start doing more events on Odamex, and Lambo here has been working with us to organize, or pre-organize, I should say. It's in a very pre-organizing state, but the introduction of Z-Daemon into the fold, I think sort of the plans for that would be survival at some point, as we've talked about. So there's lots of ideas there, and they have a really good survival team on Z-Daemon, and people that know what they're doing more so than me. So I think it's good to have Flambeau here.
Yeah, it's nice to try and get it ported there with a game type that is popular in Z-Daemon, and to try competitive play into survival, which is why we're gonna try this. And like you said, it's still in the it's in the idea phase.
Yeah,
so we need to work it out. We still have to make some rules. It will be a new. I mean, in the past there have been tournaments for survival, and most of them were just about speed running the map, getting to the exit as fast as possible. Well, but we need to get some new rules into the game to make it really competitive and put the team into team survival. So that's the project I'm working on, but it's gonna take some time.
Yeah, right. Because before it was like whenever survival was even tried, it was always like the speedrunners always had the advantage, like because they knew the maps and they tried to do whatever you do in single player, well, maybe just faster. And it's in the end, like I remember running a sort of like it wasn't even a survival; it was more like co-op speed running league, and that was basically you had like 3 attempts to do the map as fast as possible with like killing the monsters as fast as possible, and you had like 3 attempts, and the best time counts. So you could like risk on the first, risk on the second, but you didn't complete. Then you had to use your safe strats for the third. But it was like it was better to take like the no result than just go slow, because like the other teams were running ahead of you. So it was basically just a limited speedrunning competition. And it would be much better to develop something that would give like a chance to a wider audience to actually play co-op. Because when you realize that when you think that co-op should be more inclusive because it's not such a enclosed community, but then you run an event and it's dominated by even smaller amount of players, the top speedrunners, then it's like even more ridiculous.
Yeah, and the difference is so big between the majority and those few single ones that really are the best at speedrunning. Right. So like, we need to fill up the gap.
Yeah, you definitely want to like phase out speedrunning tricks like glides from the competition, because it's like not how it should be run. And Flambo and I are still discussing how to do these things, and we probably can't spoiler anything yet.
No, indeed. We don't have anything, so yeah. Well, we have something, plans. But it's just we have plans. It's just not concrete.
We have big plans.
Yes, that we can spoil. Well, we have very big plans, but yeah.
Survival was Du's pet project, much like TLMS is mine. So I thought it would be just good to say, "Oh, look, we have some progress on this. We have all the best minds." Just I'm collecting all of Trump's cast-offs. We have all the best minds on this. So.
And it works with Trump, so yeah, it should work here.
Yes.
We just need to organize it before we all go to jail.
Right. Yeah.
No, but it will be coming.
I promise you, there's no collusion. So.
Well, there's collusion between ports, actually.
Well, if you ask certain people, we're trying to create a monopoly and control every part of multiplayer Doom. Which, I mean, I have no aspirations to do that. I mean, if it happens, it happens. But
if I by chance become a dictator, I will be a benevolent one. I swear.
Yeah, if you see us suddenly become administrators of some other port, then I don't know. It could get interesting. But so another thing that Flambo has been really helpful with, and it kind of leads us into our next big event, which was my biggest thing that I've wanted to run, which was a competitive TLMS tournament. So the way that we set it up, we had it was kind of an interesting, innovative kind of way to have teams chosen. We selected the captains ourselves because we wanted, I find that more and more people want to have tournaments where they just get to play with their friends and kind of dominate. And if people who aren't on the same skill level have friends that also are not on the same skill level, they're just not going to win. And this is more about trying to grow a community of people. So we chose captains that we thought would be able to form teams where they can not only be competitive, but also mentor some players that maybe aren't on the same level as them. So, and then the interesting part about that was we selected the captains, and then it wasn't a draft system. We had the captains go out and choose their teams, and I have to say that the balance of these teams is really interesting. I think it's really pretty well balanced across the board. And the way that we've set it up is going to make for some pretty interesting games. We had so the regular season, every team, there's 6 teams, every team plays the other teams once, and so in the regular season you have 400 health, 200 armor, and you have a timer that's 5 minutes. So far in testing, I mean, we haven't really gone into sudden death mode, but let's say you were to go into sudden death, then your health would degenerate. So it would force you to start being a little bit more tactical about what you were doing. Maybe, just trying to figure out an exit strategy because one of you is going to run out of health. So it's just, not something that I've ever really played before. It's played really, really well in practice. So this is like my favorite thing. We finally picked the maps. We got some maps from FFIZ, which is sort of like, to me, my era, a classic TLMS WAD. We have DBAB, which was specifically made for TLMS. And then, of course, the UD bias that everyone talks about. I threw in some UDMX maps there. So we've got an interesting group of maps. Every matchup is going to be randomly assigned 5 of the 8 maps chosen. So yeah, I think it's still up in the air. This is kind of like 3-way CTF, where we haven't really had an organized type thing like this before. So
right, yeah.
I don't know.
I should full disclosure. MDF was actually formed because of this. No, I mean, this is basically Bones' dream project, and he would run it much sooner. But yeah, this takes some planning and some organizing and everything. So we held off for a long time, basically practicing on all the other stuff, the more traditional stuff, where we didn't have to come up with the entire system from the ground, where it was just organizing the event and coming up with like bracket systems and everything. But here everything had to be decided, like what actually constitutes competition in TLMS and not just a random game. So yeah, here we go, more than half a year later after starting this entire organization. We think we're ready with to have a go at TLMS.
Yeah, it was really about, like you said, this was something that I wanted to do. Well, actually, I should say, again, Dragon had talked to me maybe a year or so ago about his idea to do a TLMS tournament similar to the WDL with a draft and all that. And I said, well, I'm already in the non-existent server now waiting for this. So just tell me, what you're going to do. And then it never really came to fruition. So once we started doing this, that was always like my goal. And I think you were right where we talked early on about getting used to running things again, building up a player base, start small, then get bigger. And I think that was really smart because we had some oh shit moments sometimes when we were starting to run stuff stuff wasn't working. So now I feel like we're into a good groove that we know, and we have enough people that are going to give us feedback and tell us what's wrong. And
I mean, from that very moment at the start, we were talking like we will run weird game modes that weren't really tested before. We were talking about the survival events and everything.
Yeah.
But at that moment, I was like, yeah, sometimes down the line, I want to run a survival thing. But at that moment, I had no fucking idea how to actually run one that would be good. Like I could run one like those that were actually tried before, but it wouldn't really be good. And we still are hammering that out. So yeah, I thought that at that moment it was great to talk about the future plans. Like, yeah, we shouldn't limit ourselves to just CTF or duels, but it was necessary to pace ourselves because running at if we just dived straight to the TLMS and survival events right at the start, like we would get no one bored.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, and it was interesting how when we first started, we thought we were okay. We knew like how to run things, and we knew what we were doing. And then it was like,
We
I don't
couldn't
know, it was
even
something different.
we couldn't even run a dual tournament at first. I mean, fuck, we did that for so many times, and we still managed to fuck it up.
That's
Yeah.
also a quality.
What do you mean?
Well,
No.
you can do things that have been done in the past for so many times, and it will be easy. But to fuck it up every time, I mean, that's unique. That's a quality. It's an achievement, actually, and that's what makes
Yes.
MDF great.
Yes,
Because
it's
every
true.
time it's just also something fun. I mean, I witnessed most of it from the sidelines now, just only lately getting involved. But if I read back and if I look back, then it was always fun. It was always a fun event that has been hosted, and the players were having fun. And I think that that's what separates this from anything else that's being hosted at the moment.
You have
MDF
to
is really
be-
about having fun at signing up for something, participating in something in the event, and just look for the event that you like. And that's great that you at this point are going to start with a Team Last Man Standing tournament. People
You
can
have to
join it. People
be-
can.
Yeah, you have to be shameless in knowing that you could fail and an idea could be shitty. But I think you're right. There's a big difference between how Do and I ran the IDL beforehand and how we're doing this now, where it feels a lot more collaborative. I think we've managed to put together a team of people, and not even just the people that are on the council. I mean, there's people that play in all of our events that are more than willing to, give us ideas and help out. Like it just feels different, and we don't always have the right answers. So when we're running something,
I think-
and go
I
ahead.
think the critical decision was focusing on one-day events.
Yes.
Because
Lessen the burden on us and keep
I-
things fresh. Yeah.
and I don't mean just like the massive undertakings like ideal seasons, which or ZDDL or whatever. These are just exhausting and really hard to organize. And yeah, in the retrospect, if it goes well, everyone's like pointing at that for years to come. But it's so exhausting and it drains you. But even like when I ran the monthly duel tournaments, they were also exhausting. Like you always
They
have
are.
to like plan the next one rigidly, hound players to complete their games because you were still on schedule to get it done within a month. And like this is like one day of stress for us,
Yeah.
but it's so much more like condensed fun because it's like
Yeah.
you don't wait for anyone. Like if they're not there, you have to make the decision and it's done. So no like waffling about will someone be available in a week, maybe we should postpone everything by a week because someone's not available. So this is actually what contributed to being like more experimental and like to the like you don't need to rely on the same people to commit for long periods of time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also easier for the players. I mean, you don't commit yourself for a long period. Indeed, it's just for one evening, a few hours. Like for instance, with the FFA tournaments, and if somebody just is an hour late, then I mean, also to substitute some person, it's easier. Just substitute him in one round, and then he can play the rest. It's,
Sure.
And there's,
And-
I realize there are other things happening in the Doom community that sometimes are conflicting to what we run. So in the FFA tournament, for example, let's say someone's got a game at some point, like an hour into the FFA tournament, then the way that we do the groups is we can just sort of split them into the groups so that they can play their first group, go off, play their game, then come back and not miss any of the tournament. So it's like, it's just really so much easier to work with people than it was when you were talking about days or weeks or months in between, getting games done. So.
And also the use of Discord is so much help with the platform.
Yes.
People said like, okay, I'm gonna play something else. Please ping me if my round comes up.
Yeah. Oh, you're laying
worked.
in bed? Here, I'm gonna fucking message you 1,000,000 times and highlight you and at here at everyone. And
Yes.
One more thing. So yeah, the TLMS that actually starts tomorrow. So we're gonna try and get some games streamed, but it would be great if people found this to be fun and we could continue doing it. This is my favorite game mode in the world. So, but one more thing before we sign off here, we had some ideas about what we wanted to do after TLMS. We talked about survival, and one thing that has come up, maybe not consistently, but every once in a while, is regular CTF. And so for I do realize that this is a popular game mode and other people are doing other things with CTF. So for us, it would be about coming up with a unique way to do it that kind of pushes the boundaries, and it's not the same old. I mean, otherwise, there's no point in us doing the same thing that someone else is doing. So we can open up. There was a pre-show argument brewing, so I wanted to try and ignite that flame again. We were talking about having a CTF tournament that, for example, would be counted by flags and not rounds won. So you have a 3-round game. After 2 rounds, you could have 2 teams tied at 10 flags, and it would be considered a tie. You go into the 3rd round, someone, it's just counting by flags. After all, it is capture the flag.
Yes.
So, and then with that, it kind of opens up some different map choices because it makes the games very, very heavily offense centric. So it opens up map choices, and I think part of what we talked about as well was sort of throwing away some of the maps that have just become the only maps that are played. I mean, you know what they are. So coming up with new maps,
fresh.
A new WOD, something fresh, something underplayed, something not played before, not given a chance. I mean, it just opens up so many possibilities. So, what do you guys think about a league like that, where it's we're throwing around the idea of doing it by flags, and instead of rounds? So, be very interested to see because we've all played a lot of CTF. So,
well, counting pure by points and not by rounds won, it also opens up some crazy ideas for game types. One flag CTF, for instance.
Yeah, but we for this one we were talking about classic CTF.
Classic, yeah. So the idea, indeed, yeah, the idea is good.
I should probably start because I was the pro defender of the Vengeance style score by flags and not by rounds won. And yeah, I'm probably biased because I was there when Thaddeus was inventing this idea, and I was playing in those tournaments back then when they were clan based, which is almost crazy in just thinking about it today.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still think it's a neat idea. It shouldn't become mainstream. It always should be like just something special. That's like the alternative. And at all times, we were when we were organizing those tournaments, the maps needed to be really offensive heavy. You had to make the extra effort on the organizing front and pick the most offense-heavy maps. So you would be extremely challenged to limit a really dominant team to not score 5 flags. That was basically our intent. So you couldn't get into a situation where one team could like decide that we will fuck with one team by allowing 5 flags and then deny the favorites by defending really hard. Because it's an easy map to just defend to like 2-0 or something. So there will be no ZD 0-6 or whatever, like those really ridiculous defensive maps. It would always have to be a map that would naturally end in 5 flags. So that's like why I'm still a huge proponent of Vengeance tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Dragon, do you have any thoughts on this? Because I know that it's hard to break yourself out of the idea of winning by rounds. I mean, I know if you can adjust, let's say you lose around 5-2 or something, then you adjust and you win 1-0, 1-0. You would feel like, okay, well, we adjusted and we won.
Yeah,
At the same time, the other team would feel like, okay, well, I mean, we managed to score 5 flags, and yeah, we didn't score as many in the next 2 rounds, but we still got 5 flags, so shouldn't we be rewarded for that? So I kind of see both sides of the argument. But
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, because just as you say, 5-0 first round, you lose. You win the next
Mhm.
2, 1-0, 1-0. You can argue, yep, we adjusted and we won. We beat you guys. You're worse. But if that's the case, you can always argue that you shouldn't ever have lost the first game 5-0. And adjusting is a big part of CTF, regardless of which kind of way you choose to run it. If you want to do Vengeance style or Vendetta or whatever it's called with amount of flags rather than rounds, then that will benefit you in one way. If you do rounds, it'll benefit you in another. I mean, me personally, I don't care too much, but I feel just as you say, if you win 5-0 the first round, lose the other 2, you shouldn't be punished too much in the sense, and you're not if you do it by flags. And I mean, back in the day, I know when I started playing Doom competitively online, ties in scrims and stuff like that were decided by flags, which pretty soon went to be like not the way to do it, because oh my god, it's only European noobs who count by flags. I'm like, yep, okay. But I've always been keen of the idea of flags over rounds. But I mean, it goes both ways, really.
Well, yeah, I think like one style shouldn't become dominant over the other, and we shouldn't become like a league of just one of these styles. So
Exactly.
I'm definitely in favor of doing both.
Yeah.
It's just that if you choose the maps right, then the Vendetta style is amazing for like exactly those new strategies, because all of a sudden maybe like 5-0 or 5-4, you don't care. You just go for those 5 flags,
Exactly.
and you chase those 5 flags, and like the last minute when you're 3-0 up and you're still desperate because you need to score those 2 extra flags, and you just
Exactly.
don't care about anything, and it's exciting till the last second.
Yeah.
I find it to be very similar to 3-way CTF in that regard. You're just sort of trying to score as many flags as possible.
And and it's like you're always kind of like not sure if you're already in the safe, which is really, really an extra motivating factor, which I really like. But I still see like how important it is to eventually run a classic CTF thing where
Of course.
it's done by the classic rules and just strength of the team and not of like the way you embarrassingly lost 3 matches past or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's that's absolutely something that we will do down the line. But for me, I see so many of these things being run on a regular basis, and if we're going to do something like that, then for now, I think it needs to stand out, and it needs to be kind of, again, experimental. I think all these things are experimental, but as long as you organize something and you organize it well and you come up with the right set of rules, it stops being experimental and it just becomes fun. So and competitive. So I think I think if everyone is willing to give that a try, we could. I'm stuttering so much right now, but be on the lookout for that in the coming months because I think that's something that we kind of have our eyes set on. So.
Yeah, basically we're trying to be the ZDS or FNF, but more serious.
Yeah, essentially. But I think that's all we have for now. I don't know if there was anything else that we missed that we wanted to talk about before we left.
Can probably do that next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we covered all.
Well, I think we're gonna do another 32 and 24 session at some point. I don't know if is it gonna be today. I don't know, but beyond, we'll highlight you. I'm sure. I like to highlight people. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to in the future. Lots of good stuff happening now. Thank you, Do Dragon and Flambeau, for joining me. I didn't have to talk all by myself for an hour. And we will catch you guys next time.
See you next time.
Will do. Bye bye.